Good morning, everyone. Well, as it happens, it seems like weekly here, we have a little technical difficulties, so not the normal music and everything that starts the show off. We're having problems with the audible portion, but the video's working. So anyway, my name is Kenny Weiss. I'm your host, and this is the podcast is Your Journey to Success. I'm a life coach, speaker, author here based in Phoenix. And the goal here each week is to create a movement of people who are passionate about learning and growing. Now, before I get to a guest I'm really excited to have, I want to talk about a few changes that are coming, a couple of exciting announcements I have. The first part is having to do with some groups I started, because frankly, some people just couldn't afford to hire me one-to-one. So pardon me, I've started monthly groups. The cost is only $79 a month. The first group is sold out, and I have a waiting list for the follow-up groups. There's two waiting lists, one for people who follow me out of state and one here locally. So we'll meet once a week or once a month in the evenings, and we're just waiting for a couple more sign-ups before we start those groups. So that part's exciting. If you've been looking to grow and achieve better things, you can either reach out to me through a private message here or send me an email at kenny@coachkennyweiss.com. Now, this second announcement I'm really excited about. The whole format of the show is going to change. Starting next week, it's going to be a call-in radio show. You'll reach me through Skype. So you just search for my name, Kenny Weiss. And from what I've noticed, when I go solo, the interaction, the comments, and I start talking about topics, it just goes through the roof. And it showed me there's a hunger for this. So we found a way to set it up. So starting next week, it's going to be an old-fashioned call-in show. And if you're struggling with something, we'll deal with it live on the air. So that I'm really excited about. Over the week, we'll send out more details about it. But enough of that. Let's get to our great guest today. Today we have Jamie Elizabeth Thompson. Now, Jamie has had a career helping individuals and couples become fully self-expressed, empowered, and deeply met in sex and intimacy for 11 years. Yes, I said the word sex. I know we're not supposed to say that. She's special. That's what we're going to try and work on, is make it okay to say that word. Jamie specializes in helping impact-driven couples get outside of the box they're currently in and explore new desires safely, let go of sexual shame, and quickly move through conflict that they're having through their intimacy. She's the creator of something called On Your Erotic Wiring, which teaches couples and individuals how to have the best sex of their lives by breaking through the plateaus inside and outside of the bedroom through expanding their erotic menu. So the first thing I want to do is, because I know a lot of people will be shy and maybe not want to comment or join in because there is so much shame around sex, I want to start by having Jamie give all of her contact information, because this is probably the biggest topic every relationship struggles with. And so if you want to reach out to her, get more information or get some help, Jamie, why don't you start there? Let everyone know how they can get in touch with you.
Yes, thank you, Kenny. The best way to get in touch with me is through sending me a message on Facebook, actually. And I have a lot of content on Facebook as well. So my Facebook is facebook.com/Miss, MISS, Jamie, JAMIE, Elizabeth, ELIZABETH. And my website is jamieelizabeththompson.com.
Awesome. All right, we have to start at the first place. Because there's so much shame around sex, how does a woman, especially still in this culture, which breaks my heart, of men can have sex but women can't, how does a woman become a sex expert? How did you find yourself here?
It's a great question. It's been quite the journey. So I grew up, and I always like to give this context because I actually grew up in a very traditional abstinence promoting home. My parents were virgins when they met each other, and still today they are the only person that each other has been with. And I had an amazing upbringing, an amazing foundation. And for me, it was like I was so, I was in touch with sexual energy from the age of like 5 or 6. Like I was aware of it from then. And I was very fascinated by it. And so there was an element that happened in me where I thought that was bad. And I thought that I was actually bad for feeling that kind of energy. Like it was very taboo in my household, as I know a lot of people grow up with, right? It's the puritanical culture that we live in. And even if you're not religious, you still deal with this puritanical programming. Yeah. So it's very much embedded into the society of what's good and bad, but then yet it's sold to us by the media. But we could talk about that part later. So I grew up and I had this fascination. With sex and what it was all about. So naturally, I mean, I knew I was going to get into being study psychology and being a coach and working with people in that way since I was 17. That was just what I knew I wanted to do. And so I started the whole process and I went through life coaching school and then did some really in-depth work with Dr. Carl Wolf in a personal development incubator where we studied communication techniques based in neuroscience. We studied the quantum field, communication, Jungian psychology, so many different aspects. And what I found is through this process, this 8-year process of study, I was able to eliminate the experience of shame about any part of my sexuality. Okay. And anything that
I want to interrupt that key right. Because you brought it, we've already talked about it. Shame is the biggest detriment to sex.
Yeah.
And I want to key in on that. You said you found a way to eliminate that. Can you expand more on that? That's the answer, everybody.
Yes, absolutely. So what's fascinating? So through this, and what I noticed is that this is the thing that was holding everyone back. It was like as I was working with people in this incubator, and then in my life I was working with people in dating and relationships, and I noticed that this sexual shame that I was experiencing is the same thing that was holding everyone back in different ways. So the number one, like the first place we have to start, if it's like you're sitting here in this moment and you're like, I have some experience of shame. Yeah. The first place that I went and that I encourage people to go is actually to a place of 100% permission and approval for whatever it is that turns you on, period. So, and that doesn't mean you act on it, Kenny. This is what people think is like, oh, well, if I acted on everything that happened in my mind, that would be terrible, right? Well, that's what we're talking about. I'm actually talking about finding a way to look at these repressed parts, these parts that you've shamed, these parts that you might not have even thought about, and actually begin to be okay with it. So some of the things that I became okay with in myself were pieces that flew in the face of who I was during the doesn't works. We are turned on by the things that we don't allow ourselves to experience during the day. One of mine was really allowing myself to surrender and be submissive in a safe container. That was a huge thing that turned me on, but that I was like, no way, because I'm an empowered woman. I'm a feminist. And I know what I'm doing, and no way would I surrender to someone like, who do you think you are? I had a lot of fire because of, a lot of the reasons why the feminist movement even came about. But that was a big part for me, was actually finding a way to really get in touch with and then explore in a slow and safe way. These, when we're exploring these pockets of shame, it's important to do it with so much care and slowness and safety. It's really not about just like, okay, well, let's try this thing. It's more about who you become in the process of even considering it.
Yeah. Okay, so I heard a couple things there. One, was the premise that every man and woman spends their day fantasizing about certain things, and then they shame themselves for those fantasies. So the first step is, one, give yourself permission to accept that you're interested in those things, and they turn you on, and that's okay. The second thing I heard was, that doesn't mean you have to act on everything. It means, one, you have to first love yourself and stop judging yourself for those interests. That's the first piece. Then, whatever those are, like you shared for you, one of those dark things was submitting to a man in a sexual environment, which flew in the face of, I'm this strong, powerful, capable woman, and somehow that means I'm less than. And so it sounds like what you went on was a journey of, how can I keep my strength as a woman? And how does submission add to that? Well, I mean, here's one thing a lot of people don't realize. When it comes to dominance and submission, and especially women don't realize this, is the submissive is always in power. She's not actually submissive. No. That's one of the, I've had a lot of experience. I explored all this stuff. And so what gets misconstrued, and the whole 50 Shades of Grey destroyed the whole, what it's really about, because all she did was manipulate him. Anyway, we can get into that differently, but true submission, the woman or the man, if they choose to submit, is the one who's in power, because they get to decide the groundwork of the areas and the ways that they want to submit. So is that a good synopsis of basically you challenged yourself, you went against those shaming beliefs, and then became an expert in them as to why you like them, and then started to slowly, in a safe environment, explore them and find out what it was you liked and disliked. Is that a good way of explaining it?
Yes. And one thing I'd like to add to this is that what's fascinating about our sexual desires is they change. Right. I find that it's like when you really go fully into something, next thing you know is there's something else. So it's this process of constantly shifting. And it's actually, I think, the greatest tool and resource for personal development that nobody ever taught us how to use. Because when we go into these different elements, it's like, and then at one point in my life, I was like, well, I feel like I want to hone my channel and intuition. I want to be able to really connect to something higher when I'm speaking and when I'm working with people, and just really be in that state of flow. Everyone's talking about flow states and whatnot now. So it's like, how do you access that? So I went to the bedroom again to learn this, and that's when I got more into tantra and that kind of a thing, and got into breathing and circulating energy and learning how to do that. And then that practice I developed there was another amazing ingredient to my life. So that's one of the reasons why I like to work with people who are growth oriented in some way, because they get the real value of working with these different energies in the bedroom that then can support them in life. Because a lot of people are like, how would I work on that? Like, how would I even work on my learning how to circulate energy? And it's like, with your partner is an amazing way. And not only does it increase connection and bring about a whole new experience, but it also supports you in your life.
Yeah. It's about intimacy and vulnerability. And
yes.
To me,
yes.
One of the keys, the pathways out of shame, is the exact opposite of what we've all been conditioned to do. What we've all been taught to do is hide who we are. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone about your imperfections or what you feel are your shortcomings. We have to always hide that. And what I found is life is in the opposite. Almost everything we've been taught, the answer is in the opposite. When you expose, it's like my book, why it's so filled with what a train wreck I am, is I'm free. Someone comes up to me and goes, "You're a blank." And I'm like, yeah? Did you read page 182 and 65? And I'm all these other things too. So what's the big deal? I know they are as well. I'm no better or different. We're all struggling. And the second you admit it, or these dark fantasies